Good afternoon. My apologies for being late. My name is Amy Hasbrook. I'm the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. Welcome to our discussion online of euthanasia-assisted suicide and other end-of-life issues for people with disabilities for May 9th, 2014. As I said, I'm the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. TVNDY is a project of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, and our goal is to unify, inform, and give voice to the disability opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending-of-life practices that tend to discriminate against people with disabilities. So that's okay. Our position on the issue is essentially that it's unnecessary, that people with disabilities already have the right to commit suicide and to stop medical treatment that they don't wish to have, and to have palliative care and sedation until they reach a natural death. Secondly, we feel that euthanasia and assisted suicide are discriminatory practices, because when non-disabled people are suicidal, they are encouraged to have suicide prevention services. They're encouraged not to kill themselves. But when people with disabilities say they want to die, people say, oh yes, we understand why you would want to die in your condition. And they're not only encouraged to die, but they're helped to do so by such laws. Thirdly, we feel that people with disabilities, well, basically that there's the choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disabilities don't have a free choice of where and how they live. So because of lack of options for people with disabilities in where and how they live, because those choices aren't free, we don't have supports in the community to enable us to live independently in the community, or with families have adequate family support that forces people into institutions. How can you say that there's a real choice to die if people are forced into situations that are not appropriate? And finally, we believe that safeguards are inadequate to prevent people from dying who should not be killed. So people who've not asked to die are routinely killed, and this is very evident in the European context. There are more and more reports of the eligibility criteria are slipping, and more people are dying who shouldn't, under the current laws, be dying, but they're being approved for euthanasia. The goal of our online discussion is to create a place for people with disabilities to talk about our issues in the context of assisted suicide and euthanasia. And we want, the problem that we run across is that most media, first of all, are very enthusiastic about assisted suicide and euthanasia, and it doesn't give people a lot of room to talk about other viewpoints. And secondly, the media creates this false belief that there are only two ways of looking at it, either as religious conservatives or as progressives. Now, religious conservatives who do not want assisted suicide or euthanasia, and if you're not that, then you have to be a liberal progressive who wants euthanasia and assisted suicide. But the disability rights perspective takes a third position, which is that we are politically very progressive in general, and yet we oppose assisted suicide because we feel that it's a regressive policy, that it punishes poor people, and that it falls disproportionately on poor and people who are disenfranchised. And it also, as we already know, healthcare is less available for people of color, and that's certainly true for people with disabilities. So we wanted to create a context where the disability community can discuss these issues based on our knowledge of service availability or lack thereof, based on our knowledge of discrimination and what it's like to deal with hospital personnel. So that is why we created these discussions. There are a lot of ways to participate. You can go to Google Hangouts and participate via video link. You can go to our website at tvndy.ca and select the events tab, and then select today's date on the calendar, and you'll be able to participate that way. Also, you can get yourself on the mailing list and receive a mailing just before each week's event and receive the link to join us either via Google Hangouts on Air or via YouTube. There's a YouTube Hangout that you can join, or you can find that YouTube link just by searching via Google or whatever search engine you prefer. Let's see. We also have a comment section, so whether you're using Hangouts on Air or the YouTube link, you can use the comment section to ask a question, which will appear in text. I have to approach the screen to see it because I'm legally blind, but we will be able to communicate that way. Or if you choose to go the Hangout on Air route, you will be able to participate directly. If you want more information on any of the subjects that we cover during the online discussion, you can contact me directly, and my email address is tigrlily61@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter, which is @TVNDY. You can contact us via our website, which is tvndy.ca, or you can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet, and you'll see underneath is spelled out toujours vivant not dead yet. It's all one word. All right, that's enough for the introduction, which took 5 minutes. Topics. We have an update from Zombieland. We have a report on a panel on austerity and people with disabilities, and we have one news brief. So the update from Zombieland is that Bill 52 may be dead, but it may come back like a zombie. So the National Assembly reconvenes in Quebec on May 20th. Philippe Couillard, the leader of the Liberal government, has declared that his intention to raise Bill 52 from the grave and to try to have it adopted as is or in some very similar format. Based on newspaper articles and a regulation of the National Assembly, which I now cannot find, I reported earlier that it would take a unanimous vote for the Liberals to accomplish this maneuver, meaning to pass the law as it was when the National Assembly recessed on February 20th. Now, we're hearing rumors that the Couillard government is looking for some way to sidestep the regulation that requires a unanimous vote and to pass either the identical law or something very similar before the session ends for the summer. And also we're hearing rumors that it's not clear whether they're going to end the session as they do traditionally before the Festival Saint-Jean-Baptiste, which is the 24th of June, or whether they're going to continue after that. So there are a lot of ifs and possibilities still in the air. So meanwhile, the Couillard government is announcing cutbacks and austerity measures, very severe ones. So it's important to note that here that the euthanasia part of the bill would cost a lot of money to implement. And obviously, if there are austerity measures and cuts, those will affect disability services quite a bit and tend to decrease the quality of life of people with disabilities. So citizens can still make yourselves heard. The new list of members of the National Assembly is now available. I will put it on our website, and also it's available on the website of Vivre dans la Dignité, and that is Vive Dignité, VIVREDIGNITE.org. So you can find it. That's the new list of members of the National Assembly following the election. Not all of them have email addresses yet, so you have to be careful. You may have to call or write to them with a regular snail mail letter, but it's important to get in touch because the impression that has been given so far is that there is a unanimous belief in the disability community that everyone with a disability thinks this is a great idea, and we need to clarify for those folks that that's not necessarily true. So people can be in touch about and let your deputies know what your feelings are. Okay. So next is a report from a panel on austerity and people with disabilities. The council, the Comité d'Action Solidaire contre l'Austérité, also known as CASA, RAPLIC, which is the Assembly of People with Disabilities of activists in Quebec, and the public interest research groups at Concordia and McGill Universities co-sponsored this discussion yesterday. Oops, I should stop doing that. Yesterday, May 8th. The presenters were Laurence Parent from RAPLIC, Ellen Clifton from Disabled People Against the Cuts in the UK, also known as DPAC, and John Clark from the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. So I may have that name wrong, his name, not the organization's name. So Ms. Clifton described DPAC, which is a group of disabled activists who came together to oppose the autonomy measures that were brought in by the conservative government of David Cameron in the United Kingdom in 2009 and 2010. She focused on especially the work capability assessment process, where people with disabilities were assessed as to whether they could work, and if they were found able to work, were basically thrown off the disability rolls. They were given a smaller stipend for a while and expected to pursue a job, even though the unemployment rate was outrageous. And they were those job-seeking benefits diminished and diminished until they finally had no benefits at all. And the assessments, these WCA assessments, were done by a private firm called Atos, A-T-O-S. And this firm had already done similar work for some states in the United States, but had done such a poor job that they had been essentially fired from some of those contracts because they had essentially just rejected virtually everyone without very careful screening, and it had created so many situations where people had the decisions reversed on appeal that it ended up costing more money. So during 2011, once this program got started, 10,600 people died within 6 weeks of being deemed fit to work. That's quite substantial. Many people committed suicide after being found fit for work because obviously they didn't believe they were fit for work. And for others, their disabilities were exacerbated by the stress of going through the evaluation. And Ellen gave the example of one fellow who, when he was going through this evaluation process, had a stroke, and he already had some disability. And he had a stroke that paralyzed him on his right side. And once he learned that he had been deemed fit for work, he had a stroke on the other side, which completely paralyzed him. And so in the end, he was deemed unable to work, but of course, that was after he had become completely paralyzed due to the stress of this process. 90% of the determinations done by the Atos group were reversed on appeal. So essentially, they were given quotas for the number of people to take off the disability rolls. And by hook or by crook, they had to do that. And so they would give false information on the applications. They would trick people into saying certain things that could qualify them. So, for example, they would say, "So, what did you watch on TV last night?" And somebody would say, "Oh, I saw this program." And so they would check the box about ability to concentrate based on somebody saying, "I watched thus and such program on television." So it was a very basically DPAC was able to change the media perception and the public perception about this process from saying that all these disabled people were scroungers and lazy to showing the process was not good. They shifted the conversation from blaming disabled people to bringing such negative pressure on Atos that it is withdrawing from its contract. Ms. Clifton also said that their success arises in part from working in solidarity and coalition with unions, environmental groups, and other social justice movements. She emphasized that the austerity movement has brought many other cuts, including a plan to eliminate the federal independent living program. And that would happen as of the summer of 2015. And DPAC is planning more actions to respond to that particular measure, because it's obviously going to put a lot of people in institutions from where they can't work, obviously. John Clark from Ontario described how Ontario, under the Liberal Wynne government, is thinking about a similar initiative to move people with disabilities off benefits, cloaking it as in terms of empowerment. The Pathways to Employment program has been put on hold for a while, but if a conservative government is elected, it could well be reinstated and begin the same kind of cuts that happened in England. And again, I would refer back to what's happening with the Couillard government in Quebec. They're talking major cuts, and cuts like that equal a reduction in the quality of life of people with disabilities. And as we know from other jurisdictions where assisted suicide and euthanasia are legal, it's the quality of life issues related to disabilities that prompt people to want to die. And so that is of concern to those of us who oppose assisted suicide. We have one news brief, which is that we learned this week that the Supreme Court in the Carter case is considering a third question in that case. Besides considering questions related to the Charter of Rights, the Supreme Court will look at whether a province can offer a service that violates federal criminal law, and this is obviously directed toward Quebec. We don't know whether this was a case of Quebec asking them to consider it, or the Attorney General of Canada, excuse me, or whether they just undertook this on their own. But be that as it may, they are going to consider this issue. It's very frustrating because if Quebec passes a law allowing euthanasia, the fact that the Supreme Court makes this decision would make it difficult to bring a case from Quebec if the legal issue is already settled. So the case that we're looking at now, the Carter case, is based on facts, and the law facts and situations that came out of British Columbia. And there is no provincial law involved, so there was never a discussion of the federal versus provincial law. Here is a situation where they're bringing a whole other legal question in at the end with a certain set of facts that are not related to Quebec, nor the legislative history in Quebec that went into passing the law, nor the process that went into passing Quebec's law. And now they're wanting to deal with the issue of whether the provincial law can trump the federal law. And you know, if they settle that question, if the Supreme Court makes a decision saying that yes, the provincial law can prevail, that means that it would potentially be extremely difficult to bring a case out of Quebec, even that relates to the passage of the law, the problems with the law, all of those things could become very, very difficult. So it's very frustrating that this is happening. But it's happening, so it makes the hearing of the case in the fall all that more important, and it makes the political angle all that more important. Right now, CCD is an intervener, is trying to gain intervener status in the Supreme Court, and that costs money to the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, and the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition is doing the same, and they are also trying to get funds to do that. So those are two areas where people can help out, also putting pressure both on your federal and provincial deputies or members of parliament. Both of those things are very important to keep people informed about what you believe. So in order to be in touch with us and to continue this communication, you can reach us at our website, which is at tvndy.ca. You can also contact us via our Facebook, which is facebook.com/toujourdsvivant-not-dead-yet. You can reach us on Twitter. You can follow our Twitter feed, which is @TVNDY, or you can contact me directly by email, and my email address is tigrlly61@gmail.com. I thank you for attending the meetings. I invite you to look at old online discussions, which are available on our website, although I'm a little behind on putting up the last 2 or 3. But you can go to the date that you want to see the discussion and find it online. So again, when you go to our website, select the events tab and then select the calendar and select the date of the on the calendar that you want to see the discussion. They're all on Friday afternoons. And you can listen to an old online discussion. I invite you to come back next week, or to come next week, to spread the word to people, because this is a much better discussion when it's not just me talking. And I hope that you will be able to join us again, and thank you for joining us today. Take care and have until next time. Thank you. Goodbye.